The private car smelled of lemon polish and impending rain. I slid my phone back into my Birkin. The screen dark after sending the final wheels up. See you tomorrow, text to Leo. The lie was a small, smooth stone in my stomach. My presentation in Miami had wrapped a full 3 days early. The deal secured with a handshake that meant a 7-figure commission for Lancaster Capital. Leo's firm, our firm, in every way that mattered, except the name on the door. I'd told my team I was taking a red-eye to the Bahamas for a forced disconnect. I'd told my husband I was stuck in endless, dreary meetings. The truth was, I'd booked the first flight back to JFK. A sudden, visceral pull in my chest I couldn't explain. Eleanor's 70th birthday was tonight. My mother-in-law, a woman who viewed my career as a personal affront to her son's masculinity, whose birthday party I was, according to my official schedule, tragically doomed to miss. A small, wicked part of me wanted to see the look on her perfectly lifted face when I walked in, bearing the Van Cleef Arpels bangle I'd spent 2 months hunting down. A larger, softer part to the part one usually kept locked in the same vault as my vulnerability that just wanted to see Leo's face, to surprise him, to feel his arms around me after a week apart, to whisper the good news about the Miami deal in the quiet of our bedroom. The stone in my stomach warmed at the thought. Maybe this was sentiment, maybe it was fatigue, or maybe some quiet, watchful part of my brain, the part that ran numbers and calculated risk for a living, was sounding an alarm I'd been too busy to hear. The brownstone on East 74th was lit up like a cruise ship, golden light spilling from every window. The hum of a jazz quartet and the clatter of glasses filtered into the damp street. I paid the driver, adjusted the sleeves of my travel-wrinkled Joseph jacket, and hefted the 2 gift bags, one large, Tiffany blue for Eleanor, one small, dark gray for Leo, holding the onyx cufflinks engraved with his initials, and, on the inside, a tiny, hidden S. Sentiment, again. My secret smile felt fragile. I never used the front door for these things. Eleanor's soirees were a minefield of social climbers and ancient dowagers who'd assess my outfit, my posture, my choice of champagne flute before I'd taken 2 steps, the kitchen entrance, through the wrought iron gate and down the 3 steps, was my secret passage. Maria, the housekeeper who'd been with the Lancasters since before Leo was born, would be there. She'd slip me a glass of something strong, give me the lay of the land. The kitchen was a chaotic haven of catering staff and steaming platters. Maria's eyes went wide when she saw me. Dios mío, Mrs. Lancaster, you're early. Mr. Leo, he said you were in Florida until Sunday. I got lucky, I said, leaning in to kiss her flour-dusted cheek. Her usual warm smile was tight, her gaze skittering away from mine. A prickle, cold and sharp, touched the back of my neck. Is everything okay, Maria? Si, she said too quickly, wiping her hands on her apron. It is a big party, very loud. Her eyes darted toward the swinging door that led to the main hall. Maybe you want to freshen up first? In the library, the alarm in my head grew louder. I'm fine, I said, my voice cooler than I intended. I set the gift bags on a clear spot on the granite counter. Is he in the drawing room? Before she could answer, a familiar laugh cut through the kitchen's din Leo's laugh, but fuller, looser, tinged with a boastful note I knew from investor pitches where he was overplaying his hand. My feet moved on their own, carrying me to the small, round window in the swinging door. The hall was packed, the glittering swarm of Eleanor's world. And there, in the center of the room, under the blinding crystal chandelier, was my husband. His hand was not wrapped around highball glass, as I'd imagined. It was clasped firmly around the delicate, tanned fingers of Chloe Bennett. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. Chloe, the college sweetheart, the one he'd described, in rare, unguarded moments early in our marriage, as a beautiful mess, the aspiring artist who'd left for LA a decade ago. She was back, her honey blonde hair cascading in perfect, beachy waves, her scarlet dress a slash of bold color against the room's tasteful beiges. She was laughing at something Eleanor was saying, her head tilted in a way that was both coy and proprietary. I stood frozen, a ghost in the doorway. The stone in my stomach turned to ice, then to a white-hot coal. I watched, dispassionate, as my mother-in-law reached out and cupped Chloe's cheek, her face a mask of doting approval. I saw her lips form words I could almost hear over the murmur of the crowd. So much more radiant than that workaholic wife of his. And then Leo raised his free hand. The room quieted. He was holding a flute of champagne. He had a speech face on, the one he used for toasts at the Met Gala or the annual board meeting. Everyone, he said, his voice carrying, confident, tinged with a happiness that felt like a physical blow. Thank you for coming to celebrate my incredible mother. A ripple of applause. He smiled, the easy, charming smile that had once made my knees weak. But the best gift I can give her tonight, the gift of true happiness, is to finally share my own. He squeezed Chloe's hand. She gazed up at him like he'd hung the moon. Many of you knew Chloe from our days at Brown. Well, fate has a funny way of bringing the right people back into your life. Mom, friends, I'd like you to properly meet my girlfriend, Chloe. The applause was instant, enthusiastic. A few whoops from his frat boy friends. Eleanor beamed, pulling Chloe into a side hug. My new daughter, she trilled, and the crowd ate it up. Girlfriend, my girlfriend. The words bounced around the hollowed-out space inside my ribs. I looked at my left hand, the emerald-cut diamond on my finger, chosen by his grandmother, felt suddenly grotesque, a costume jewel. I thought of the text I'd sent from the car, the lonely hotel rooms, the late nights I'd spent poring over his family firm's books, finding the tax loopholes that had saved them a fortune, the bullet I'd taken for him, the scar a permanent whisper on my skin. For this, a strange calm descended. It wasn't acceptance. It was the eerie, focused silence before a predator strikes. The part of my brain that navigated hostile takeovers and boardroom coups clicked online, shoving the shattered, weeping part of me into a soundproof room. Assess, adapt, act. My hands were steady. I pushed the kitchen door open. The noise of the party hit me first, then the smell of perfume and canapes. I didn't walk, I glided. Years of navigating rooms just like this one took over. My posture was perfect, my face a polite, neutral mask. I moved through the periphery of the crowd, unseen, a shadow in my travel-worn clothes. I reached the central clearing just as the applause began to die down. Leo was leaning in to kiss Chloe, a soft, triumphant kiss. I stopped. I set my purse down on a Chippendale side table, and then, slowly, deliberately, I began to clap. The sound was sharp, solitary, a steady, rhythmic punctuation in the fading noise. 1, 2, 3, 4. It cut through the murmur. Heads turned, confused smiles at first, then recognition, then dawning, horrified comprehension. A wave of silence rolled out from where I stood. I kept clapping, my gaze locked on my husband. Leo pulled away from Chloe, a frown of annoyance at the interruption touching his lips. He followed the crowd stares. His eyes met mine. The color drained from his face. It was instantaneous, a violent, sickly blanching. The charming Toastmaster vanished, replaced by a boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. His champagne flute slipped from his fingers, exploding on the parquet floor in a shower of crystal and Veuve Clicquot. The sound was gunshot loud in the silence. Surprise. Darling, I said, my voice clear and cool, carrying in the dead quiet. I let my hands fall to my sides. I'm so sorry to interrupt your performance. The spell broke. A cacophony of whispers erupted. Chloe's perfectly painted mouth was a little of shock. Eleanor looked as if she'd swallowed a wasp. Her earlier joy replaced by sheer panic. I didn't look at them. My eyes were only for Leo. I offered him a smile, the kind you give a tedious colleague at a mandatory mixer. Then I turned and walked, slowly, toward the grand foyer. My heels clicked a steady, unhurried beat on the marble. Serafina, his voice, ragged with panic, cut through the whispers. I heard his hurried footsteps, the squelch of his dress shoes on the wet champagne. A hand closed around my wrist, damp and desperate. I stopped. I looked down at his hand, then up at his face. His expression was a masterpiece of terror, guilt, and a begging, pathetic hope. Sera, please, my God, let me explain. I didn't wrench my arm away. I simply rotated my wrist, a neat, practiced motion I'd learned in a self-defense class he'd insisted I take. His grip broke easily. I leaned in close enough to smell the champagne on his breath, the cologne I'd bought him for Christmas. Don't touch me, I said, the words a soft, icy whisper meant only for him. The divorce papers will be at your office by 10 a.m. My lawyer will be in touch. I'd recommend you get one, a good one. I started to turn, then paused, as if remembering a minor errand. Oh, and Leo, that little side project of yours? Funneling $240,000 from our joint liquidity account to finance CB Galleries? I saw the blood drain from his face again. A satisfying sight. My forensic accountant found it adorable, and my lawyer is very interested. Have a lovely rest of the party. Do give my best to your girlfriend. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out the front door, into the cool, misty New York night. The door swung shut behind me, muffling the rising tide of scandalized voices. I didn't hail a cab. I walked. The shock was beginning to recede, not into pain, but into a crystalline, hyper-aware clarity. The pieces were already snapping together. The business trips to LA, the new passwords on his laptop, the way he'd flinched last month when I'd casually mentioned running into an old friend from Brown. It was all so obvious, so cliché. I felt a surge of contempt for him and for myself for not seeing it sooner. But the pain that was a distant tremor, deep underground, I knew it was coming. The seismic shock of betrayal, the collapse of a 10-year life. But for now, a different engine was roaring to life. It was cold. It was precise. It was furious. I pulled out my phone, not to cry, not to call a friend. I opened my contacts and tapped the name of the most ruthless, discreet divorce attorney on the Eastern Seaboard. Then I opened a rideshare app. I didn't select my home address, our home address on Nolita. I selected the peninsula. As the black town car glided to the curb, I took one last look at the glowing brownstone. The party inside was ruined. His mother's birthday, his triumphant announcement, his whole carefully constructed lie, shattered. A smile, thin and sharp as a blade, touched my lips. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the prologue. The marble lobby of the peninsula was a cathedral of hushed sounds and muted light. My reflection in the polished brass elevator doors was a stranger, a woman in a slightly crumpled Joseph jacket, her posture unnaturally straight, her face a serene, empty mask. The elevator attendant, a young man in a pristine uniform, murmured, "Good evening, ma'am," his eyes carefully avoiding any direct assessment. I gave him the ghost of a smile. "Good evening. My husband just publicly declared another woman his girlfriend at his mother's birthday party. I thought you should know. The suite was exactly as I'd requested. High floor, corner, with views of the dark, glittering canyons of Fifth Avenue. It was opulent, silent, and utterly impersonal. A blank canvas. I dropped my purse on the foyer table, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet. I didn't turn on the main lights. I walked to the minibar, poured 2 fingers of amber scotch into a heavy crystal tumbler, and downed it in one burning gulp. The heat was a welcome shock, a tiny, controlled fire to match the inferno slowly igniting in my chest. I stood at the window, the cool glass against my forehead. The calm I'd worn like armor in the brownstone was beginning to crack at the seams. In the silence, the images assaulted me. Leo's blanched face, Chloe's triumphant, scarlet-clad pose, Eleanor's adoring smile, the feel of Leo's damp, desperate hand on my wrist. My girlfriend, a raw, animal sound clawed its way up my throat. I choked it back, my nails digging into my palms. No, I would not shatter. Not here. Not now. Shattering was for victims. I was not a victim. I was a principal at West Sterling Private Equity. I was the woman who'd negotiated a 9-figure acquisition while doped on painkillers after the shooting. I was Serafina Lancaster, and I had just been presented with the most hostile takeover bid of my life. My own life, the professional part of my brain, the cold, analytical engine, roared to life. Emotion is data. Betrayal is intelligence. Pain is a liability. I acknowledged the data, analyzed the intelligence, and began the process of isolating the liability. It was 11:17 p.m. I picked up the suite phone. This is Serafina Lancaster in 3201. I need a conference call set up in this room at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Video capable. Ensure there is coffee, pastries, and secure Wi-Fi. Charge everything to the room. Of course, Mrs. Lancaster. Will there be anything else? A pot of strong black tea. Now, please, while I waited for the tea, I opened my laptop, my personal laptop, the one Leo had never had the password to. I navigated past folders, labeled portfolio companies and market analyses, to one simply called L inside, a series of subfolders, tax returns joint, property deeds, Lancaster Capital, shareholder agreements, and one, more recent, labeled anomalies. I clicked it open. It held PDFs, scanned bank statements, screenshots of wire transfer confirmations. For 8 months, a quiet, persistent itch had nagged at the back of my mind. A missing $20.000 here. An unexplained consultancy fee of $50.000 there. Always from our joint liquidity account, the one we used for household expenses, taxes, vacations, the one it primarily funded. Leo's explanation had been a masterclass in casual gaslighting. Babe, that was for the Hamptons plumbing emergency. Remember? The guest house pipe burst? Or, that's the interior designer's final installment for the Nolita apartment. You signed off on it. I'd been busy, distracted. I'd let it go. But 3 months ago, the itch had become a rash. A $240.000 transfer to an LLC called CB Holdings. I'd asked. He'd sighed, running a hand through his hair in that way he knew I found endearing. Serafina, it's an investment. A friend of a friend has this gallery space in Chelsea. It's a steal. I'm using some of the firm's risk capital. It's nothing. It wasn't nothing. CB Holdings. Chloe Bennett. I'd hired a discreet investigator the next day. The report was in the folder. Photos of Leo and Chloe. Cozy in the Hamptons. Lease agreements for a Chelsea storefront signed by Chloe Bennett, with a guarantor line bearing a signature that was a clumsy forgery of my own. Loan documents from a secondary lender, using our Nolita apartment as collateral, again with my forged signature. The investigator's final note. Subject and Ms. Bennett appear to be in a romantic relationship. They are presenting as a couple in social settings. The gallery is scheduled to open in 6 weeks. I'd received the report 2 weeks ago. I'd sat on it, paralyzed by what? Hope? Denial? The staggering, humiliating fear that I'd misunderstood? That night, I'd made his favorite steak au poivre. He'd been late, smelling of a perfume that wasn't mine. Client dinner ran long. He'd said, kissing my forehead. I'd smiled and said it was fine. The tea arrived. I poured a cup, the familiar ritual steadying my hands. I opened my contacts and began to make calls. Not to friends, not to my mother, to my allies. The first was to Rebecca Stein. It was midnight, but she answered on the second ring. Serafina. Her voice was alert, crisp, devoid of sleep. Rebecca didn't do small talk. This is a late call. It's not social. No. Rebecca. It's not. I need you. Full martial law. Leo. Infidelity. Financial fraud. Forgery. Substantial sums. There was a beat of silence. I could hear the scratch of a pen. Details. I gave her the cliff notes. The party. The public declaration. The $240,000. The forged signatures. The gallery. The investigator's report. Where are you? She asked. The peninsula. Good. Don't go home. Don't communicate with him directly. I'll be there at 7:30 a.m. with preliminary filings. We'll move for a temporary restraining order, freezing all joint assets and his personal accounts. The forgery and fraudulent transfers are felony larceny in New York. We have him by the balls. Serafina. A grim satisfaction warmed the chill in my veins. I don't just want him by the balls. Rebecca. I want him to hand me the scalpel. Explain. A freeze is reactive. I want to be proactive. He thinks I'm emotional, that I'll lash out or beg. I want him to feel safe, to get overconfident. Rebecca was silent for a moment. You want to let him keep digging. I want him to finish the gallery, to sink more money in, to fully commit the fraud. I want the SEC to be interested, not just the divorce judge. A low, appreciative hum came through the phone. You're a scary woman. Lancaster. I'll bring a forensic accountant. 8 a.m. The next call was to Andrew West, my business partner, my friend, the only person, besides Rebecca, who knew the full extent of the bullet I'd taken for Leo. He answered with a rough, sleepy, "Ça va? Everything okay?" No. My voice finally cracked on the word. I swallowed, forcing steel back into it. Leo. He's been having an affair with Chloe Bennett. He introduced her as his girlfriend tonight at Eleanor's party. I was there. Jesus Christ. I heard rustling, the click of a lamp. Where are you? Are you safe? The peninsula. I'm safe. I've called Rebecca. Good. Do you need me to come over? Do you need, I don't know, ice cream and bad movies? The unexpected kindness almost undid me. A hot pressure built behind my eyes. I squeezed them shut. I need your other skill set. Andrew, the one that terrifies junior analysts. His voice changed, the sleepiness vanishing, replaced by focused intensity. Okay, talk to me. Leo's been moving money, $250,000, at least, to fund a gallery for her. Forged my signature on loans. It's financial fraud. Idiot. Andrew muttered. What's the play? Lancaster Capital is shaky. You know that. Leo's been chasing bad biotech bets for 2 years. The only reason they're solvent is because of the clients it brought in and the structures I'd signed. He's leveraged to the hilt personally to cover firm margins. I could almost hear his mind working, making the connections. You want to spook his investors. I want you to help me make him think I'm coming for his company. A hostile takeover bid. Let the rumors slip to the right people. Watch him scramble to protect his crown jewel. He'll get reckless. He'll make mistakes. He might even try to move more money, which Rebecca will be tracking. Andrew let out a long whistle. You want to orchestrate a run on his bank while you're blowing up his marriage. That's diabolical. I love it. Consider it done. A well-placed word at the grill tomorrow lunchtime. Thank you, Andrew. Ça va? His voice softened. For what it's worth, he's the biggest fool in 5 boroughs. Get some sleep. The war starts tomorrow. Sleep was impossible. I spent the remaining hours of the night methodically organizing files, drafting a timeline, and preparing a dossier for Rebecca. As the first gray light touched the skyline, I showered, changing into a spare black pantsuit and heels I kept in my go bag for emergency meetings. I twisted my damp hair into a severe knot, wore paint. At 7:28 a.m., Rebecca arrived, followed by a lean, sharp-eyed man she introduced as Mark, the forensic accountant. Rebecca, in her signature navy suit and with a sleek black bob, looked like she'd been up for hours. She took in my appearance, the open laptop, the organized files, and gave a curt, approving nod. "You're ready." We got to work. I laid it all out. Mark's fingers flew over his keyboard, his eyes gleaming as he followed the money trail. "It's beautiful," he murmured, almost reverently. He didn't even try to hide it well. "The forgeries are amateur hour. The wire trails are a straight shot from your joint account to a shell, to the gallery's operating account. It's a prosecutor's dream. It's a divorce court's dream." Rebecca corrected, a shark-like smile touching her lips. "We can bury him. We'll file for divorce on grounds of adultery and cruel treatment. The fraud gives us leverage for an unequal distribution of assets. We'll go for the Nolita apartment, the Southampton house, 80% of liquid assets. He'll be lucky to keep his socks." I listened, sipping my now cold tea. The plan was perfect, brutal, efficient. It would leave Leo broken, publicly humiliated, and financially crippled. It was what he deserved. And yet, no, I said quietly. They both stopped and looked at me. "No." Rebecca's eyebrow arched. "Serafina, this is a slam dunk. We have him. I don't want to slam dunk him yet," I said, my voice low and steady. "A freeze on the accounts. Yes. File the papers. Yes. But I want the fraud allegations held back. For now." Mark looked confused. Rebecca's eyes narrowed, calculating. "You're dangling the carrot. I'm setting a trap. I want him to know I know. But I want him to think I'm too hurt, too prideful, to go to the authorities. I want him to believe my only goal is a clean, quick financial divorce. He's arrogant. He'll think he's outsmarted me. He'll get sloppy. He might even try to liquidate other assets to cover the gallery's opening costs, which will give us more leverage." Rebecca finished, understanding dawning. "You want to give him enough rope to hang his entire financial life. I want him to hand me the noose." I confirmed. "And I want Chloe Bennett's gallery to open. I want the ribbon cutting, the champagne, the press. And then, when she's standing there, having achieved her dream on my stolen money, I want the world to know exactly how it was funded." A long silence followed. Mark looked slightly afraid of me. Rebecca's smile returned, wider and more genuine. "Now, that is a bloodless coup. Okay, we file for divorce. Cite irreconcilable differences initially. We freeze the joint accounts. We send a formal letter detailing the discovery of irregularities in the joint finances, demanding an accounting. It'll panic him, but not enough to lawyer up properly. He'll think it's a negotiation tactic. Perfect," I said. My phone buzzed on the table. "Leo." The screen flashed with his name. A photo of him smiling from our sailing trip in Sardinia. I felt nothing. No pang. No longing. Just a cold, clean void. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again and again. Then the text started flooding in. "Leo, Sarah, please. We need to talk. Leo, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like. Leo, she means nothing. It was a mistake. A huge, stupid mistake. Leo, where are you? The apartment is empty. Leo, answer your phone. This is insane." I picked up the phone. Rebecca put a hand on my arm. "Serafina, don't. Anything you say can be used against you." "I know," I said. I typed a single, clear response. "Me. All communication is to go through my attorney, Rebecca Stein. Her details will be provided to you today. Do not contact me directly again." I hit send. The buzzing stopped. The silence was profound. The next move came from an unexpected direction. My phone lit up with a new text. Not from Leo. From Chloe. Chloe, I'm sure this is hard for you, but you need to face reality. Leo hasn't loved you for a long time. Do the dignified thing and walk away. Don't embarrass yourself further. I stared at the message. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it. The cool, patronizing tone. Do the dignified thing, why fingers were steady as I typed my reply. I didn't threaten. I didn't curse. I stated facts. Me. Chloe, the lease for your gallery space at 455 West 22nd Street expires in 37 days. Your landlord, Hudson Properties, LLC, sold the building this morning to a holding company I control. The new management is reviewing all tenant agreements. I'd start packing. Also, give Leo my best. I'm sure you two have a lot to discuss, like felony fraud. I sent it. 3 dots appeared immediately. They bounced, then disappeared. No reply came. A smile, my first real one in 12 hours, touched my lips. It felt sharp. It felt good. Let's begin, I said to Rebecca and Mark, turning my phone face down on the table. We have a lot of work to do. The war room was in session. The bloodless coup had begun. And for the first time since I'd walked into that brownstone, I felt a flicker of something other than icy fury or hollow pain. I felt the quiet, steady thrill of the hunt. The process server was a woman in her 50s with a kind, tired face and a no-nonsense demeanor. She handed Leo the thick manila envelope as he stepped out of a lunch meeting at Cipriani Wall Street. I know this because the private investigator I'd retained at a different, more specialized one than the one who'd compiled the initial report sent me a series of time-stamped photos. The sequence was almost artistic. Leo, smiling, shaking a client's hand, the smile faltering as he saw the woman. Confusion turning to recognition, then to dawning horror. Him taking the envelope, his name clearly visible on the label, him tearing it open right there on the sidewalk, his eyes scanning the first page, his face bleaching of all color, the client looking concerned, then awkward, then quickly making an excuse and walking away. Leo, alone on the crowded street, the papers fluttering in the wind as he fumbled for his phone. My phone remained silent. He'd gotten the message. All communication through Rebecca. Instead, my phone buzzed with a call from Rebecca herself. The package has been delivered. Reaction was theatrical. According to my source, he's currently sitting in the back of his town car, hyperventilating. He's called his lawyer, Marty Bronsky. Bronsky, a bulldog in a $5,000 suit. Old school, connected, notoriously aggressive in divorce cases for wealthy men. Leo was bringing out the big, expensive guns. Good. It meant he was scared. Bronsky will call me within the hour. Rebecca continued, a note of relish in her voice. He'll bluster. He'll threaten. He'll try to paint you as a gold-digging hysteric. The standard playbook. Are you ready? I looked around the sun-drenched loft in Soho I'd leased on a 6-month contract. It was all clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and emptiness, a blank slate, a bunker. I've been ready for years. Rebecca, I just didn't know it. Bronsky's call came 53 minutes later. Rebecca put him on speaker in my presence, her phone lying on the reclaimed wood table between us. Rebecca, Marty, I assume this is about the Lancaster matter. Rebecca's voice was cool, professional. Rebecca, let's cut the shit. Bronsky's voice boomed, gravelly and loud even through the speaker. Your client has lost her damn mind. Filing on grounds of adultery, cruel and inhuman treatment. This is a vindictive fantasy. We'll countersue for defamation. This will get ugly, and your girl will not like how she looks when it's over. I met Rebecca's gaze. She didn't flinch. My client's mental state is excellent, Marty, and supported by a team of forensic accountants and a sworn affidavit from a licensed investigator with photographic and documentary evidence of Mr. Lancaster's ongoing affair, including his public declaration of the other woman as his girlfriend in front of dozens of witnesses 2 nights ago. As for ugly, she let the word hang. We haven't even begun to show you ugly. We're prepared to file a concurrent civil suit for fraud, forgery, and larceny. The DA's office might find our evidence packet compelling reading. There was a long silence on the other end. We could almost hear the gears grinding in Bronsky's head, recalibrating. The bluster was a first move. Now he was realizing the board was set up differently than he'd assumed. What does your client want? The question was clipped, wary. Our terms are outlined in the filing. Primarily, an immediate and unequal division of assets due to egregious financial misconduct. We're happy to negotiate from that position, but, Marty, Rebecca's tone turned icy. Tell your client that if he so much as texts my client directly again, or attempts to contact her through intermediaries, we escalate directly to the SEC and the Manhattan DA. No more warnings. Are we clear? Another pause. I'll confer with my client. The line went dead. Rebecca smirked. He's scrambling. He had no idea about the fraud. Leo kept him in the dark. Classic. The next move came faster than I expected. That evening, as I was reviewing a prospectus for Andrew's potential investment in my nascent Phoenix collective idea, the intercom buzzed. The doorman's voice. Strained. Ms. Lancaster. There's a Mr. Lancaster here. He's quite insistent. I hadn't given Leo the address. He'd had me followed. A fresh, hot spike of anger pierced my calm. Let him up. Carlos. It's fine. I didn't get up. I stayed seated at the table, the prospectus before me. I heard the elevator ding, the hurried, heavy footsteps in the hall. My door wasn't locked. It burst open. Leo looked like he'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. His tie was loose, his hair a mess, his eyes bloodshot. The veneer of the charming financier was gone, stripped away to reveal the panicked, entitled boy beneath. He took in the sparse loft, me sitting calmly, and the fury on his face deepened. What the hell is this? Serafina? He roared, slamming the door behind him. The walls echoed with the sound. You set me up. This whole thing is a setup. I slowly placed my pen down. A setup? Leo, you introduced another woman as your girlfriend. In front of me, in front of everyone. The setup was entirely your own. You know what I mean. He stormed further into the room, gesturing wildly at the papers I'd been reading. This, the fraud allegations, the forensic accountants. You've been planning this. You're trying to destroy me, to steal my company. I leaned back in my chair, assessing him. This was the core of him. I realized the fragile ego I'd spent a decade propping up. He couldn't conceive of his actions having consequences. In his mind, my discovery wasn't a result of his betrayal. It was a premeditated attack on his kingdom. Your company? I kept my voice low, deadly calm. Lancaster Capital was circling the drain 2 years ago. Your vision was a series of bad bets on fad tech and shaky biotech. The clients that kept the lights on, the Kensington Group, Walter van der Bill, my contacts, my relationships, the tax structures that kept you from being audited into oblivion, my designs. You didn't want a partner. Leo, you wanted a brilliant ghostwriter who'd also warm your bed and make you look good. And when I got too successful, too independent, it threatened you. So you ran back to Chloe, who looks at you with those adoring, empty eyes and makes you feel like a king again. A king of a very small, very pathetic hill. He flinched as if struck. The truth, plainly spoken, was a weapon he had no defense against. You bitch, he hissed, the word dripping with venom. You cold, calculating bitch. You never loved me. You loved the access, the name. I stood up then. Slowly, I walked around the table, stopping a few feet from him. I let him see the full, unvarnished contempt in my eyes. I loved you, I said, And the words, though quiet, felt like they were ripped from a place I'd thought was dead. I loved you when you were a hungry young VP with more ambition than sense. I loved you enough to take a bullet for you. This, I gestured to the scar hidden beneath my silk blouse, wasn't for access. It was for you. And you turned that love into a liability. You made me a fool. For a second, something flickered in his eyes, not remorse, but a shard of recognition, of shame. It was gone in an instant, replaced by a more familiar, defensive rage. So this is your revenge? Ruining me? Taking everything? I'm not taking anything that wasn't mine to begin with, or that you didn't try to steal from me first. I said. I walked to a sideboard, picked up a thinner folder, and held it out to him. This is a settlement offer. Sign it. You retain a non-controlling 30% of Lancaster Capital. I walk away with the apartment, the Southampton house, and 70% of our liquid assets. It's more than generous, given that I could bury you in lawsuits and have the SEC crawling so far up your assets you'll taste government issue shoeshine for a decade. He snatched the folder, his eyes scanning the first page. His face purpled. This is a joke. This is theft. I built that firm. You're standing on a house of cards. Leo, and I'm holding all the aces. I took a step closer. My voice dropped to a whisper. Remember the Delacroix Pharmaceuticals deal? 2 years ago? The one that miraculously saved your fourth quarter? His eyes went wide. He remembered. You were drunk. You celebrated at the Oak Room. You bragged to me about the insider tip you'd gotten from a guy at the FDA. You thought it was pillow talk. I thought it was a felony. I let that hang in the air, watching the blood drain from his face again. It was becoming a familiar sight. I have notes, dated notes, on paper, in my handwriting, locked in a safety deposit box my lawyer knows about. Refused to sign. And tomorrow morning, that information, along with a detailed analysis of the stock trades you made the following week, gets delivered to the right people in a plain brown envelope. He stared at me, his mouth agape. The fury was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. This was the nightmare he hadn't seen coming. Not the divorce, not the social shame, but the complete and utter annihilation of his professional life. Possibly his freedom. You wouldn't. He stammered. The bluster gone. You'd be implicated too. You're my wife. I'm the wife who reported her husband's criminal activity the moment she discovered it. I said smoothly, a wife terrified of her powerful husband. A victim. The narrative writes itself. And with Chloe waiting in the wings, who do you think a jury will believe? The grieving, betrayed wife? Or the cheating financier and his, what did the tabloids call her? Gallery girl? The folder trembled in his hand. He looked from the papers to me, and I saw the moment he broke. The fight went out of his shoulders. He was just a man standing in a half-empty room, realizing he'd gambled everything and lost. You're a monster. He breathed, the words devoid of heat, just a statement of cold fact. No, Leo, I said, walking back to my chair, dismissing him. I'm the monster you created. Now get out of my home. The papers go to Bronsky by noon tomorrow. Signed. Or the box gets opened. Your choice. He stood there for a long moment, a shattered statue. Then, without another word, he turned and left, the door clicking shut softly behind him, a pathetic contrast to his dramatic entrance. The silence that followed was immense. I didn't move. I waited for the crash of emotion, the delayed reaction to facing down the man I'd once vowed to spend my life with. It didn't come. Instead, a profound, bone-deep exhaustion settled over me, laced with a clear, cold certainty. I had won this battle, but the war wasn't over. As if on cue, my phone lit up. A text from Andrew. Andrew, word on the street is Lancaster is trying to secure emergency liquidity. He's calling in every favor, selling personal assets. The rumor you wanted planted is taking root. People are asking questions. I texted back, me. Good. Let the questions grow. Have lunch at the grill tomorrow. Be seen. Be heard. Andrew. Already on the books. With a certain brilliant, recently single, venture capitalist. 1 p.m. Where something that says, I'm thriving and you're not. A faint, real smile touched my lips. The next move in the chess game. A public display of strength. Of moving on. Of alliance. Leo would hear about it. It would drive him mad. I looked at the prospectus for the Phoenix Collective, a venture to fund women-led startups, a fresh start built from the ashes of the old. I picked up my pen. The fear, the pain, the loved they were ghosts in the empty loft. The only thing that felt real, the only thing that felt like me, was the work in front of me, and the cold, perfect arc of justice I was drawing. The invitation to the Museum of Modern Art's Spring Gala arrived on heavy, cream-colored stock, embossed with the iconic MoMA logo. It was addressed to me alone, Serafina Lancaster, not Mr. and Mrs. Small. Deliberate snub, or perhaps a nod to the new reality. In the rarefied air of New York society, scandal was a currency, and mine was currently trading high. I knew I had to go. Hiding would be seen as shame. Attending alone would be a statement. Andrew called the morning of the event. The buzz is palpable, he said, his voice crackling with amusement. You're the main event, darling. More anticipated than the de Kooning. Lovely, I replied, examining my reflection in the full-length mirror. I'd chosen a custom Ralph Lauren tuxedo in stark black and white wide-leg trousers, a sharply tailored jacket with satin lapels, worn over nothing but my skin and a sheer mesh bodysuit. It was armor. It was a challenge. It said, I am not in mourning. I am on the battlefield. Leo is bringing her. Andrew continued, his tone turning serious. He's trying to brazen it out, present a united front, damage control. A cold sliver of anticipation shot through me. Good, I said. Let him. The gala was a sea of gowns and tuxedos, a low roar of conversation and clinking glasses under the soaring atrium. The air smelled of expensive perfume, champagne, and ambition. As I entered on Andrew's arm, did a calculated move of solidarity and optics. The subtle hush seemed to ripple through the crowd nearest the door. Heads turned, eyes, some sympathetic, most voraciously curious, tracked my progress. I felt their gaze like a physical touch, scanning for cracks, for tears, for the slightest sign of unraveling. Andrew squeezed my arm gently. Remember, he murmured, leaning in, you're not the scandal. You're the survivor of it. Smile like you know something they don't. I did. I knew everything. And I smiled. We made our way through the throng. I exchanged air kisses with acquaintances, accepted condolences on my troubles with a gracious nod, deflected probing questions with bland pleasantries. I was playing my part, the dignified, wronged wife, moving on with quiet strength. It was exhausting, a performance more draining than any boardroom negotiation. Then I saw them. They were holding court near a massive Calder Mobile. Leo looked polished, tense, his smile a brittle thing. Chloe was a vision in clinging emerald green silk, her arm threaded possessively through his. She was laughing too loudly at something an older patron said, her head thrown back, the picture of youthful, triumphant vitality. She saw me before he did. Her laughter died mid-peal. Her eyes met mine across the room, and in them I saw not guilt, but a fierce, glittering challenge. Leo followed her gaze. His face went rigid, the confident facade he'd been wearing shattered, revealing the panicked man from my loft. For a long, charged moment, we stared at each other across the gulf of broken vows and stolen money. I gave him the same faint, dismissive smile I'd given the gossip columnist from the Post. I turned away. I spent the next hour orbiting them, a distant, elegant satellite. I spoke with the museum director about their new acquisition fund. I listened to a sculptor discuss his upcoming show. I was seen. I was engaged. I was unbroken. It was during a conversation with Andrew and a potential investor for Phoenix Collective that the inevitable collision occurred. We were near the bar. I felt a presence at my elbow, a cloud of cloying, floral perfume. Serafina. Chloe's voice was saccharine sweet. What a bold choice. A tuxedo. Very androgynous. I turned slowly. Andrew, and the investor, fell silent. Leo stood a few feet behind her, a trapped, miserable look on his face. Chloe, I said, my tone neutral, as if acknowledging a slightly bothersome fly. Green. How literal. Her smile tightened. I just wanted to say how brave it is of you to come tonight, given everything. She made a vague, pitying gesture. I know it must be so hard, seeing everyone knowing. Knowing what? I asked, genuinely curious. That my husband is a fraud and an adulterer? Or that his mistress has the aesthetic subtlety of a parade float? A small, shocked gasp came from the investor. Andrew coughed to hide a laugh. Chloe's cheeks flushed. She took a step closer. Her voice, dropping to a venomous hiss, meant only for me. You're pathetic, clinging to a man who doesn't want you. Everyone here pities you. Pity is an emotion I reserve for those who build their futures on forged signatures and other women's husbands. I said calmly, taking a sip of my sparkling water. How's the gallery coming along? Chloe, secured your long-term lease yet? Her composure cracked. I saw the raw fury in her eyes. She got my text. She knew I owned her building. Her hand, the one holding a nearly full glass of deeply red Cabernet, twitched. It happened almost in slow motion. She stumbled, lurching forward. The glass tilted. A wave of dark red wine arced through the air and splashed across the front of my pristine white jacket and the sheer mesh beneath. A collective, sharp intake of breath from the onlookers. Oh my God! Chloe exclaimed, her voice a perfect mimicry of shock and regret. Her eyes, however, gleamed with malice. I am so sorry. How clumsy of me. It's ruined. The stain spread, a vivid, violent bloom against the white. The room was utterly silent, all pretense of other conversations gone. Every eye was on us. This was her play, a public humiliation, to reduce me to a wine-stained mess, a figure of pity and ridicule. Leo looked stricken, frozen. Andrew started forward, his face dark with anger. You did that on purpose. I held up a hand, stopping him. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of rage and adrenaline, but my mind was ice cold. This was a test, a public test of everything I was made of. I looked down at the stain. Then I looked back at Chloe. I didn't speak. With deliberate, unhurried movements, I unbuttoned the single button of my jacket. I shrugged it off, letting it fall to the floor in a sodden heap. Beneath, I wore only the sheer, black mesh bodysuit. And now, in the bright, unforgiving light of the museum atrium, fully visible through the delicate fabric, was the scar. It started just below my collarbone, a thick, ropey line of pale, knotted tissue, and snaked diagonally down across my ribs, ending near my sternum. It was ugly. It was undeniable, a brutal testament to a violent moment I carried on my skin. The silence deepened, morphing from scandalized glee to something heavier, more profound, shock, awkwardness, a dawning, horrified comprehension. Chloe's triumphant smirk vanished, replaced by confusion, then by a sickening realization that her gambit had horribly backfired. I didn't cover myself. I stood there, in the middle of that glittering crowd, letting them all see it. My gaze never left Chloe's. 3 years ago, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the dead quiet. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. Leo and I were leaving a fundraiser. A man, high on something, desperate for money, tried to mug us. He had a knife. I paused, letting the image form. Leo froze. I didn't. I turned my head, just slightly, to look at Leo. His face was ashen. He was staring at the scar, as if seeing it for the first time. The blade was aimed at his throat. I continued, my eyes back on Chloe, on the crowd. I pushed him out of the way. I took it instead. 6 inches of steel between my ribs. The doctors said I was lucky. Leo. I let a beat of silence hang, heavy with implication. Leo said the scar was my medal, a testament to what I'd do for him, what I'd sacrifice. I reached down, picked up my ruined jacket. I held it loosely in my hand, the red wine dripping onto the polished floor. Now it's just a scar, I said, my final words dropping into the silence like stones. A reminder that some people aren't worth bleeding for. I didn't look at anyone else. I turned. Andrew, his expression a mixture of fury and fierce pride, instantly offered me his own tuxedo jacket. I shook my head slightly. Let them look. Let them see. I walked out of the atrium, head high, the scar exposed for all the world to see. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. I heard not a single whisper until the heavy doors swung shut behind me. The cool night air hit my skin. I began to tremble, a violent, uncontrollable shaking that came from the very core of my being. The performance was over. The armor was off. The vulnerability I'd just weaponized was now a raw, open wound. Andrew caught up with me on the sidewalk, wrapping his own jacket around my shoulders. Jesus. Sarah. He breathed. Are you okay? I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. The tears I'd refused to shed in front of them finally welling up, hot and stinging. My phone buzzed in my clutch, then buzzed again, and again. News alerts. Page 6. Scar tissue. Society wife's secret. Sacrifice revealed in gala drama. New York Post. Wine-soaked showdown. Serafina Lancaster's battle scars silence critics. The narrative had been set. The story was no longer about the other woman. It was about the wound, the sacrifice, the betrayal. The next morning, as the digital headlines blazed and the gossip shows dissected every frame of the encounter, my phone rang, a number I hadn't seen in weeks. Eleanor. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again. On the 4th try, I answered. Serafina. Her voice was thin, shaky, stripped of its usual commanding hauteur. It was the voice of an old, frightened woman. I saw the papers, the news, that scar. My God. Leo never. He told me it was from a skiing accident, a stupid fall in Aspen. I stood in the sunlight of my loft, looking out at the city. I felt nothing for her. No anger, no satisfaction, just a vast, empty distance. He lied, Eleanor, about that, about a lot of things. A wet, ragged breath shuddered down the line. I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know about the severity, what you did for him. She trailed off, weeping openly now. I've been a fool, a jealous, petty old fool. I encouraged him with that girl because she flattered me. She made me feel young and important. And you were always so capable, so independent. You didn't need me approval. I resented you for it. Her confession hung in the air, pathetic and too little. Too late. Your apology is noted. Eleanor, I said, my voice flat, but it doesn't change anything. You chose your side. You celebrated the woman who helped your son betray me. You are not my mother-in-law anymore. You are the mother of the man who broke his vows and tried to steal from me. We have nothing more to discuss. Serafina, please, she begged. Goodbye. Eleanor. I ended the call. I put the phone down. The trembling had stopped. The tears were gone. In their place was a new sensation, one I hadn't felt since before I'd walked into the birthday party. A sense of clean, uncluttered power. I had taken her intended humiliation and turned it into my vindication. I had taken my deepest vulnerability and made it my strongest shield. The social ambush was over. I had not only survived it, I had won. But as I scrolled through the financial news alerts on my tablet, I saw a different headline. Lancaster Capital shares tumble 8% amid social scandal. Investor jitters. The battle in the ballroom was won. The war for his empire, and for my future, was just entering a new, more decisive phase. I picked up the phone and called Rebecca. The settlement papers. I said, "Have they been signed?" "Not yet." She replied, "Bronsky is stalling. I think they're scrambling for a new strategy. Don't let them stall." I said, my eyes on the falling stock ticker for LANC. "Turn up the heat. Let's see how brave they are when the walls are truly on fire." The fallout from the gala was a sustained, low-frequency hum in the background of my new life. My scar, once a secret held between husband and wife, was now public property. Strangers on the street sometimes recognized me, their eyes darting to my chest with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. The tabloids had dubbed it the scar heard round the world, and for a week, I was the reluctant poster child for wronged women everywhere. I hated it. I hated the reduction of my pain, my anger, my entire shattered marriage into a salacious soundbite. But I also understood its utility. In the court of public opinion, I was now untouchable. Saint Seraphina, who bled and was betrayed. It was a narrative even Eleanor couldn't spin. Legally, the gears were grinding. Leo, through the increasingly exasperated Marty Bronsky, had countersigned the settlement papers, but with a caveat, a mandatory mediation session before final court approval. It was a stalling tactic, a last-ditch effort to find some leverage, some crack in my armor. Rebecca assured me it was a formality. "He's hoping you'll get emotional, make a mistake. He's hoping to appeal to the good times. Don't give him an inch." I had no intention of giving him anything. My life had settled into a strange, productive rhythm. My days were spent in the Soho loft, which was slowly transforming from a bunker into a command center. Blueprints for the Phoenix Collective's physical space were pinned to one wall. Financial models for the seed fund were open on my laptop. Andrew was a near-constant presence, his steady, pragmatic energy a balm against the lingering chaos. We were partners, in every sense of the word except the romantic one, though sometimes, late at night, over a shared bottle of wine and spreadsheets, I'd catch him looking at me with an expression that wasn't just professional admiration. I carefully looked away each time. My heart was a locked vault, and I'd thrown away the key. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the message came, not from Leo or his lawyer, but through a conduit I'd almost forgotten. Isabel Crane, a society wife I knew superficially from a dozen charity boards. Her text was awkward, laden with unspoken apology. "Isabel, Seraphina, darling, I know this is terribly intrusive, and please feel free to tell me to go jump in the Hudson. But Chloe Bennett reached out to me. She's in a state. She's desperate to talk to you. She says it's urgent. About the baby. I told her I'd pass the message along. But that's all I'm willing to do. I'm so sorry you're going through this. X." I stared at the phone. The baby. A cold, clarifying calm settled over me. So that was his play. Or hers. A pregnancy. The oldest trick in the other woman's handbook. It was almost too cliché to be believed. Was Leo that desperate? Was Chloe that stupid? I showed the text to Andrew, who was frowning over a pro forma cash flow statement. He snorted. "A baby? Please. The timeline is absurd. Even if they'd started the moment you left for Miami, it's not about biological plausibility." I said, my mind racing. "It's about emotional warfare. It's about creating a future I'm supposedly destroying. It's about painting me as the heartless ex standing in the way of a beautiful new family." I tapped my fingers on the desk. "She wants to meet? You're not seriously considering it." Andrew said, his expression darkening. "It's a trap. She'll have a photographer hidden in a potted plant. She'll try to provoke you. I know it's a trap." I said softly, "But sometimes, the only way to disarm a trap is to spring it yourself." I picked up my phone and texted Isabel back. Me. Thank you. Isabel. Tell her I'll meet her. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. The cafe at the Whitney. Public. Brief. The location was strategic. The Whitney was my turf. A place of art and quiet contemplation. A public cafe meant witnesses. But the museum crowd was less likely to be tipped off paparazzi. It was neutral, but on my terms. Isabel, are you sure? I don't like this. Me. Neither do I. But it's time to end this. The next morning, I dressed with intentional simplicity. Cream-colored silk trousers, a black cashmere sweater, minimal jewelry. I looked like what I was a busy, successful woman, squeezing in a brief, inconvenient meeting. Chloe, when I arrived, was a study in calculated distress. She sat in a corner booth, her face pale under a light dusting of makeup, dark circles artfully smudged under her eyes. She wore a flowing empire waist dress in a soft lavender, the cut subtly suggesting a gentle swell beneath. She clutched a glass of water with both hands, the picture of fragile, maternal anxiety. I slid into the booth opposite her, not bothering with a greeting. You have 15 minutes. Chloe, I have a board call at 11. She flinched at my tone, her lower lip trembling. Up close. The performance was good. She'd always been a decent actress. Thank you for coming, she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. I know you must hate me. Hate requires an investment of emotional energy I've redirected elsewhere. I said, my voice cool. You said it was urgent, about a baby. Is Leo the father? I cut straight to the heart of it, denying her the slow, tearful build-up she'd undoubtedly rehearsed. The question seemed to throw her. She'd expected more circumspection, more drama. Of course he is, she stammered, placing a protective hand on her stomach. We're in love. Serafina, what happened with you? It was over long before I came back into the picture. This baby, it's a blessing. A new start for him. For us. I said nothing, just sipped my espresso, watching her. The silence unnerved her. She leaned forward, her whisper intensifying. I'm 10 weeks. We saw the heartbeat. It's a miracle. A single, perfect tear tracked down her cheek. Leo is over the moon. He wants to do right by us. But with the divorce, the legal fights, you're going to take everything. You're going to leave him with nothing. How can he provide for his child? Ah, there it was. The pivot. From miracle to monetary demand. What do you want, Chloe? I asked, my tone bored. She took a shaky breath, as if steeling herself. I'm not a monster. I don't want to see him ruined. But you have to see reason. Drop the financial claims. Let him keep his share of the assets. The capital, for the baby's future, be the bigger person. Just walk away cleanly. For the sake of an innocent child. Her eyes pleaded with me, a masterpiece of manipulative sincerity. I let her plea hang in the air between us. I took another slow sip of my espresso, placed the cup down with a precise click. Then I reached into the slim leather folder I'd brought with me and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I slid it across the table. What's this? She asked, her eyes darting down. It's a sworn affidavit from your housekeeper, Lucia Mendez, dated 2 weeks ago. She states that you have hosted, and I quote, several loud parties each week at the Hamptons house Leo rents, and that at these parties, you and your guests were frequently seen using a white powder that you would snort through a small glass tube. She was particularly troubled by the mess it left on the glass coffee table. I kept my voice flat. Factual. Cocaine use during pregnancy. That's quite a choice. Chloe, brave. Her face, so carefully pale, flushed a mottled red. She's lying. That miserable, jealous cow. I'll have her fired. I'll sue her for slander. I'm sure you'll try, I said mildly, pulling out a second sheet. This is a certified copy of a medical report from Mount Sinai Hospital. Your name, your date of birth. It details a total hysterectomy performed 18 months ago due to severe endometriosis. A very thorough procedure. By the looks of it, the surgeon's notes are quite detailed. I tilted my head. A miracle indeed. A medical one, I suppose. A pregnancy after a complete hysterectomy. You should publish a paper. All the color drained from her face, leaving her a ghastly white. The trembling in her hands was no longer an act. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The carefully constructed facade of the glowing, expectant mother crumbled into dust, revealing the panicked, cornered woman beneath. I don't, that's a forgery. A lie. She finally choked out, but the fight was gone from her voice. And finally, I said, pulling out a third document, enjoying the theatricality of it now, the slow, deliberate reveal of her ruin. This is a notarized statement from Dr. Aaron Schiff, a urologist on Park Avenue. He confirms that one Leonardo Carter Lancaster underwent a vasectomy 5 years ago. The procedure was successful. Follow-up tests confirmed a 0 sperm count. He hasn't been able to father a child since 2021. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a confidential murmur. Leo was always so terrified of an accident derailing his career. He said he never wanted kids. I was the one who suggested the vasectomy. He said it was the best decision we ever made. The final blow landed. Chloe stared at me, her eyes wide with horror and dawning comprehension. The entire foundation of her scheme, that the pregnancy, the leverage, the future she was selling that was built on quicksand. And I had just shown her the bottomless pit beneath it. He told me he wanted a family. She whispered, the words a broken thing. He said, you were the one who refused. He lied. I said simply, gathering the papers back into my folder. To you, to me, to himself. So, Chloe, let's review. Either you're carrying a miraculous, cocaine-resistant, post-hysterectomy baby fathered by a sterile man, or you're attempting to commit fraud and extortion. Which story would you prefer I give to the Post? I'm sure they'd love a follow-up to the Scar story. Gallery Girl's miracle baby. Fact or fiction? Has a nice ring to it. She was crying in earnest now. Ugly. Heaving sobs that drew glances from other tables. The fragile damsel was gone, replaced by exposed, humiliated mess. You bitch. She hissed, the venom returning through her tears. You frigid, heartless bitch. You're enjoying this. No, I said, standing up. I threw a 20 on the table for my untouched espresso. I'm not enjoying it. I'm ending it. Stay away from me. Stay away from my lawyers. And for God's sake, get a better scriptwriter. This one was pathetic. I turned to leave. Her hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong, desperate. Please, she begged, her mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. He'll leave me if he finds out. He'll hate me. I have nothing without him. I looked down at her hand on my wrist. Then, slowly, firmly, pried her fingers loose. I met her desperate gaze. You had nothing with him. Chloe, you were just the latest accessory. Now you're damaged goods. I'd wish you luck. But we both know that's not how this works. I walked out of the cafe, the spring sun feeling strangely cold on my skin. The encounter should have felt like a victory. It was a victory. I had dismantled her completely, exposed her as a fraud. But all I felt was a profound, hollow exhaustion. The lies were so deep, so pervasive. They had infected everything. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I hailed a cab. Leo. Of course. The text was a single, furious line, all caps. Leo. What the hell did you say to her? She's hysterical. She says you're making up lies about me. I got into the cab, gave the driver the address for my loft. Then I typed my reply, my fingers steady on the glass screen. Me. I simply told her the truth. About your vasectomy. Funny. The things you forget to tell your girlfriend. Then again, you also forgot to tell your wife you had one. Among other things. I'd focus on comforting her. If I were you, She seems to think you're her future. I'd say you're about to be her very expensive and very public past. I hit send. Then I blocked his number. The back and forth was over. The revelations were complete. When I got back to the loft, Andrew was waiting, a look of tense expectation on his face. Well, he asked, how was the tragic mother-to-be? Not pregnant, I said, dropping my bag on the console. In fact, medically incapable of ever being so. And Leo had a vasectomy 5 years ago. Andrew's eyebrows shot up. Then he started to laugh, a deep, genuine laugh of disbelief. You're kidding. She tried the pregnancy blackmail on a man who's shooting blanks? The sheer, breathtaking audacity. Desperation makes people stupid, I said, but I didn't laugh with him. I walked to the window, looking out at the city. The hollow feeling was still there. She was just a symptom. Andrew, a shiny, desperate symptom of the real disease, which is him, a man who lies so habitually to everyone that he probably doesn't even know what the truth is anymore. Andrew's laughter faded. He came to stand beside me. You're not feeling sorry for her, are you? No, I said, and it was the truth. But I'm not feeling triumphant either. I just feel clean, like I finally scrubbed off the last layer of grime from that part of my life. I turned to him. The mediation is tomorrow. I want it done. I want it over. It will be, he said, his voice certain. He has no cards left to play. I hoped he was right, but as I lay in bed that night, the documents I'd shown Chloe burned behind my eyes. The hysterectomy report, the affidavit from the housekeeper, the vasectomy confirmation they were weapons I'd gathered, coldly and efficiently, for a war I'd hoped I wouldn't have to fight. The woman who had suggested the vasectomy, who had held Leo's hand and told him it was for the best for their dual career. No distractions, life. That woman felt like a stranger to me now, a naive stranger who believed in partnership, in sacrifice, in a shared future. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, clearer-eyed, and utterly alone. The revelation wasn't about Chloe's lies. It was about the final, utter death of my own illusions. The mediation was set for 9 a.m. in a conference room on the 40th floor of a midtown tower. The kind of bland, expensive neutrality where fortunes were divided and futures dismantled. The air smelled of overbrewed coffee, lemon-scented wood polish, and barely contained animosity. Rebecca and I arrived 15 minutes early. She was a vision of lethal composure in a dove-gray Armani suit. Her briefcase containing not just legal briefs, but the meticulously compiled evidence of a marriage's autopsy. I wore a simple black dress, my hair in a severe chignon. I felt strangely detached, as if I were observing the proceedings from a great height. Leo and Marty Bronsky arrived exactly on time, trailed by a junior associate clutching a stack of binders. Leo looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His suit was impeccable, but it hung on him as if he'd shrunk inside it. His eyes, bloodshot and shadowed, darted to me the moment he entered, then skittered away, unable to hold my gaze. The swaggering financier, the pleading husband, the furious man in my loft that all were gone. In their place was a hollowed-out shell vibrating with a desperate, cornered energy. Bronsky, by contrast, looked pugnacious, a bulldog ready for a fight. He gave Rebecca a curt nod that was all business, no courtesy. The mediator, a retired judge named Franklin with a weary, seen-it-all expression, called the session to order. We sat on opposite sides of a long, polished mahogany table, a no-man's land of legal pads and water pitchers between us. The purpose of today is to see if we can reach a mutually agreeable resolution without the need for a protracted, public, and undoubtedly painful trial. Judge Franklin began, his voice a dry monotone. Mrs. Lancaster's counsel has filed a comprehensive settlement proposal. Mr. Bronsky, your client has countersigned with reservations. Let's discuss those reservations. Bronsky cleared his throat, leaning forward. My client finds the proposed division of assets to be punitive and grossly disproportionate. Your Honor, it is based on a series of exaggerated claims and, we believe, motivated by a desire for revenge, not equity. Rebecca didn't blink. The division is based on clear evidence of financial fraud, forgery, and dissipation of marital assets. Your Honor, Mr. Lancaster funneled nearly $250,000 of joint funds to his paramour, forging my client's signature on loan documents. That's not a claim. It's a felony. The proposal is generous in that it doesn't insist on criminal prosecution. Leo flinched. Bronsky's jaw tightened. Allegations, which we dispute. Furthermore, we believe Mrs. Lancaster's own conduct during the marriage, and particularly following the separation, is highly relevant to equitable distribution. A cold finger traced down my spine. Here it comes. What conduct would that be? Mr. Bronsky? Judge Franklin asked. His tone bored, but his eyes sharpened. Bronsky opened a binder. We have reason to believe that Mrs. Lancaster has been engaged in an inappropriate relationship with her business partner, Mr. Andrew West, for some time, a relationship that likely predated the breakdown of her marriage. This calls into question the narrative of the wronged wife and suggests she may have been diverting marital energy and assets to foster this other relationship. The accusation hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Rebecca remained still, but I could feel the fury radiating from her in waves. Leo was staring at the table, a muscle twitching in his jaw. He couldn't even look at me for this. Judge Franklin looked at Rebecca. Counsel? Rebecca's smile was frost. This is a desperate and defamatory smear. Your Honor, with no basis in fact. Mr. West is my client's business partner and friend. We can provide sworn affidavits to that effect. This is a transparent attempt to distract from Mr. Lancaster's own egregious misconduct. Bronsky pushed a grainy, blown-up photograph across the table. It showed Andrew and me leaving the Peninsula Hotel together the morning after the party. We were walking side by side, not touching, both in business attire. They were seen sharing a hotel suite. Immediately after she left the marital home, I was staying at the Peninsula. Your Honor, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was calm, clear. Mr. West came for a 7:30 a.m. business meeting with myself and my attorney, Rebecca Stein, who was also present. We were discussing how to secure my assets from my husband's fraudulent activities. The hotel log and security footage will confirm this. It was a war council, not a tryst. Bronsky barreled on, ignoring me. We also have financial records showing unusually close business ties, investments that seem designed to benefit Mr. West's fund. Your Honor, Rebecca cut in, her voice like a whip crack. This is irrelevant, prejudicial, and a waste of this court's time. If Mr. Bronsky has evidence of an affair, let him present it. A grainy photo of two colleagues walking is not evidence. It's tabloid fodder. Meanwhile, we have actual evidence of fraud. We have the forged signatures. We have the wire transfers. We have the testimony of the paramour herself, Chloe Bennett, who can confirm the nature of her relationship with Mr. Lancaster and the purpose of the funds. Leo's head snapped up at that, his eyes wide with panic. He didn't know we'd deposed Chloe. Bronsky looked momentarily thrown. Chloe's testimony was the last thing they wanted. Rebecca pressed her advantage. In fact, given the serious and scurrilous nature of the allegations just made against my client, I believe it's time we address the full picture of Mr. Lancaster's extracurricular activities and their financial implications. She opened her own briefcase. With the court's permission, I'd like to call a witness we've asked to be on standby. His testimony directly relates to Mr. Lancaster's pattern of using illicit information for personal gain. which goes to the heart of his financial ethics and the potential source of some of the marital assets. Judge Franklin looked intrigued and weary. This is highly unorthodox for a mediation. Ms. Stein, the allegations just made by opposing counsel are an unorthodox and dirty tactic. Your Honor, we simply wish to clear the air completely. Franklin sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Very well, but make it quick. Rebecca nodded to her associate, who stepped out. A moment later, the door opened, and a man walked in. He was in his late 30s, with the fit, carefully maintained look of a former athlete turned finance bro. He wore a nervous expression, but his shoulders were set. Leo stared, confusion on his face, which slowly curdled into dawning. Abject horror. He knew this man. State your name for the record. Rebecca said, Tyler Ross. And what is your relationship to Mr. Lancaster and Ms. Chloe Bennett? Tyler's eyes flicked to Leo, then away, as if from something distasteful. I was in a relationship with Chloe Bennett for about 18 months, until last fall. During that time, I became aware of her renewed involvement with Mr. Lancaster. And how did you become aware? Rebecca's tone was gentle, leading. Tyler took a breath. Chloe liked to talk. She liked to impress. She told me how Leo was taking care of her, how he was going to make all her dreams come true. She showed me the plans for the gallery. Then, about 8 months ago, she let slip how he was managing it. She said Leo had guaranteed the success of a small biotech stock I was invested in. NextGen Therapies. He told her it was a sure thing, because he had a friend at the FDA who'd told him their flagship drug was about to get fast-track approval. He told her to tell me, as a favor. Tyler's voice hardened. I'm a trader at Goldman Sachs. Ms. Stein, I know what that is. It's insider trading. I confronted Chloe. She laughed. She said Leo had friends everywhere, and this was how the real world worked. I broke things off with her shortly after. The relationship was over, but I kept the stock. The FDA announcement came 2 weeks later. The stock tripled. The room was utterly silent. The only sound was Leo's ragged, shallow breathing. He looked like he was about to be sick. Bronsky had gone pale, his aggressive posture completely deflated. This was no longer about divorce. This was about a federal crime. Did you profit from this trade, Mr. Ross? Rebecca asked. I did. Approximately $200,000. I've already reported the trade and the circumstances to my compliance department and the SEC. I'm cooperating fully. He looked directly at Judge Franklin. I was stupid, and I was used. I'm here because what he did was wrong, and because when Ms. Stein approached me, she made it clear that Mr. Lancaster used his affair with Chloe as a conduit for this illegal activity. It wasn't just a betrayal of his wife. It was a corruption of the system. Rebecca, let that settle. Your Honor, this testimony directly links Mr. Lancaster's adulterous relationship to serious securities fraud. It demonstrates a pattern of illicit behavior, a willingness to break laws as easily as he broke his vows. It also suggests that the marital assets he is so keen to protect may be, in part, the fruits of criminal activity. In light of this, our settlement proposal is not merely generous. It is an act of extraordinary restraint. We are offering him a way out that does not involve a federal prison cell. Judge Franklin was no longer looking weary. He was looking at Leo with cold, judicial disgust. He turned to Bronsky. Counselor, do you have any questions for this witness? Any rebuttal to this startling information? Bronsky seemed to have shrunk in his chair. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally managed. We would need time to review these allegations. There's no time, Judge Franklin said flatly. Based on what I've heard today, that the forged documents, the admitted affair, and now this testimony suggesting a pattern of financial crime, that I am ready to issue a recommendation to the trial court. I find Mrs. Lancaster's proposed settlement to be more than fair. More than fair, Mr. Bronsky. I suggest you advise your client to sign it immediately and without further amendment, and to thank whatever deity he prays to that Mrs. Lancaster is choosing to settle this in divorce court and not in federal court. It was over. The legalistic scaffolding of Leo's defense had been vaporized. The final move had been played, and it was checkmate. Leo finally spoke, his voice a broken whisper. Not to the judge, not to Bronsky, but to me. You planned this. You brought him here to destroy me. I met his gaze across the table. For the first time, I felt no anger, no pity, not even contempt. Just a vast, empty clarity. I didn't destroy you. Leo, you did that all by yourself. I'm just the one holding the door open on your way out. The formalities were a blur. Bronsky, defeated, agreed to the original terms. Documents were signed with a frantic, hopeless speed. The mediation was adjourned. Tyler Ross left with a final, grim look at Leo. Rebecca began packing her briefcase, a satisfied set to her mouth. Leo stood up, his movements jerky. He walked around the table, stopping in front of me as I gathered my things. The hollow shell was now filled with a trembling, impotent rage. You never loved me. He spat, the words barely audible, meant for me alone. It was all a transaction for you, a business deal. You're a machine, a cold, heartless machine. I straightened up, looking at him, this man who had been the center of my universe. I thought of the bullet, the scar, the years of support, the love I genuinely believed in. He had taken all of it and thrown it in the mud. And now, standing in the ruins, he had the gall to accuse Meph being heartless. I loved you, I said, and for the first time, I let him hear the sheer, unvarnished truth of it, stripped of all its painful history. But you turned that love into the worst investment of my life. Consider this, the divestment. I turned and walked out of the conference room, Rebecca at my side. We didn't speak until we were in the elevator, descending towards the lobby. The SEC will be contacting him by the end of the day. Rebecca said quietly, Tyler's cooperation gives them the opening they needed. It won't be pretty. I nodded, staring at the descending floor numbers. The victory felt sterile, a necessary surgery, but the patient had been a part of me, and now that part was gone, leaving an ache where it used to be, outside, on the sun-drenched sidewalk. Andrew was waiting, leaning against a town car. He'd insisted on coming, on being there. His face was tense with concern until he saw my expression. Then it cleared, and he opened his arms. I didn't fall into them, but I did step close, letting his solid presence block out the chaotic rush of the city. It's done, I said. Good, he replied, his voice soft. He searched my face. What now? I looked past him, down the bustling street. The future, for the first time in months, was a blank page, not a battlefield. Now, I said, a flicker of something that wasn't pain or anger stirring in my chest. I have a meeting about what comes after the Phoenix Collective. I have an idea for a venture fund specifically for women in biotech, to develop the drugs insider traders try to profit from. A slow, real smile spread across Andrew's face. It lit up his eyes, crinkling the corners. It was the smile of a partner who saw not just survival, but a blueprint for something new. Now that, he said, opening the car door for me. Sounds like a plan. As the car pulled into traffic, I didn't look back at the tower. I looked ahead. The final move was mine, and it wasn't an ending. It was the first. Clean line on a new, empty canvas. 6 months. It felt like a lifetime, and also like the blink of an eye. The dust had settled. The divorce decree was a fact, a piece of paper in a fireproof box. Leo's legal and financial unraveling had been swift and merciless. The SEC investigation, sparked by Tyler Ross's testimony, had metastasized. Lancaster Capital was now a shell, its assets frozen or sold off to pay fines and legal fees. Leo's name, once a token of old money respectability, was now a byword for hubris and fraud in the financial pages. I never asked for details. Rebecca provided them in sterile, clinical emails. I deleted them unread. He was a chapter one had finally, definitively, closed. My energy, my focus, my very being had been poured into the Phoenix Collective, the gallery space on West 22 and D Street that Chloe's failed dream had been gutted. In its place was something all light, glass, and raw potential. The exposed brick walls remained, but now they were hung not with derivative art, but with sleek screens displaying data visualizations and the bold logos of our first cohort of startups. The air hummed with a different kind of energy, not the clinking, gossipy buzz of a society party, but the vibrant, crackling static of ideas, of code being written, of prototypes being assembled. Opening night, the space was packed, but with a different crowd. There were VCs in Patagonia vests, tech journalists with discerning eyes, and, most importantly, the entrepreneurs themselves. A kaleidoscope of women, young, old, of every background, stood by their stations, their eyes alight with a passion I recognized. It was the look of building something that was entirely, unequivocally theirs. I moved through the throng, a glass of sparkling water in my hand, a real, unforced smile on my face. I was wearing a jumpsuit by one of our first designers, a brilliant Parsons grad who created adaptive clothing for people with disabilities. It was elegant, powerful, and it had a secret magnetic closure system that made it revolutionary. I felt, for the first time in over a year, like I was wearing my own skin. Andrew found me near a demo station where a young woman was showcasing an app that used AI to match foster children with ideal families. He looked effortlessly handsome in a dark suit. No tie, his expression one of quiet, profound pride. He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. "You did this. Sarah, look at it. Wedded this." I corrected, but the warmth in my chest was undeniable. This was my kingdom, not inherited, not married into, not taken, built, with my own hands, my own mind, and yes, with the capital that was my rightful due. The ghost of Leo, stolen $250,000, was here, transformed into seed money for a single mother's clean tech company that was developing a revolutionary water filtration system. Poetic justice had never felt so productive. I gave a short speech from a small, circular stage. No podium, just me and a microphone. The room quieted. 6 months ago, this was an empty space built on a lie. I began, my voice clear in the hushed room. Today, it's a foundation built on truth. The truth that ideas matter, that passion matters, that women, so often told to make ourselves smaller, to be quieter, to be muse rather than maker, are in fact the most powerful engines of innovation and change on the planet. I gestured to the room. The Phoenix Collective isn't about rising from ashes. That's a passive metaphor. It's about choosing the fire, choosing the heat that forges you into something stronger, sharper, and more beautiful than before. It's about looking at what tried to burn you down and using its embers to light a beacon for everyone coming after you. The applause was thunderous, genuine, as I stepped down, shaking hands, accepting hugs. I felt a hand on my elbow. It was Mara, the clean tech founder, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you," she whispered fiercely. "You have no idea what this chance means. For me, for my daughter. Show me what it means," I said, squeezing her hand. "Build something magnificent." It was during a lull, as I was discussing user acquisition costs with the app developer, that I saw him, a flicker of gaunt, familiar pallor at the very edge of the room, near the entrance. Leo. He looked like a ghost haunting the scene of his own exorcism. His suit was the same one he'd worn to the mediation, but now it hung off him, shapeless and slightly shiny at the elbows. His face was thinner, etched with new lines of stress and defeat. He was trying to be invisible, but his eyes were locked on me, burning with a complex brew of hatred. longing, and sheer, stunned disbelief. Our security detail, a discreet but firm team I'd hired for the night, noticed him at the same time I did. Two large men in dark suits began moving towards him with purpose. Leo saw them coming. For a second, I thought he might cause a scene, might shout my name, might try to storm the stage of my triumph. A year ago, he would have. 6 months ago, he might have. But the man he was now just stared at me across the brilliant, thriving space, the kingdom he had no part in. I held his gaze, my expression calm, neutral, not hostile, not triumphant, just present, here, in my rightful place. The security guards reached him, speaking in low tones. Leo's shoulders slumped, the last vestige of fight leaving him. He cast one last, lost look around the vibrant room, a man looking at a future he could never access. And then he turned and allowed himself to be led out, disappearing into the New York night as silently as he'd arrived. The brief interruption was like a stone dropped in a pond. The ripples faded almost instantly. The buzz of conversation resumed. Andrew materialized at my side again, his body subtly positioned between me and the door. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it. The sight of him had evoked nothing but no fear, no anger, not even pity, just a distant, clinical acknowledgement, like seeing a dangerous animal safely behind glass. He's not part of this story anymore. The party wound down. The entrepreneurs, giddy with excitement and exhaustion, began to pack up. The investors drifted away, making notes on their phones. Andrew and I were among the last to leave. He helped me into my coat, his hands lingering on my shoulders for a moment longer than necessary. "Walk with me?" he asked. "It's a nice night." We left the glowing hive of the Phoenix Collective and stepped onto the quiet Chelsea street. The spring air was soft, carrying the distant scent of rain and the earthy smell of the nearby river. We walked in comfortable silence for a block, the events of the night settling around us. "You were incredible in there," he said finally. "Not just the speech. All of it. This is who you are. Sera, this builder, this creator." He never saw it, or he saw it and was terrified of it. "I know," I said softly. The admission didn't hurt. It was just truth. He stopped under the glow of a street lamp, turning to face me. The city's sound seemed to recede. "There's something I've wanted to say for a year, maybe longer." He took a deep breath, his usual confidence replaced by a vulnerable earnestness that made my heart stutter. "That first day you walked into the conference room at West Sterling, I thought, there's a woman with a furnace inside her." I spent the next few years watching you bank those fires, channel them into his dreams, his ego, his mediocrity. It was like watching a Ferrari used as a golf cart. A surprised laugh escaped me, sharp and genuine in the quiet street. And then, he continued, his eyes serious, "I watched the world try to put that fire out, with betrayal, with humiliation, with legal threats. And I watched you not just keep it burning, but use it to forge yourself into something entirely new, something unbreakable." He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair the night breeze had loosened from my chignon. "So my question, the one I've been sitting on for a year, is this. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of letting me be the man who stands next to that fire? Not in front of it, not to hide from it or take credit for its heat, but next to it, to warm my hands by it, to maybe, if I'm very, very lucky, help you build the things it has the power to create?" He wasn't kneeling. He wasn't presenting a ring. He was offering a partnership of a different, deeper kind, a recognition, a vow to see me, all of me, and to choose the brilliance and the burn. Tears, unexpected and hot, pricked my eyes, not tears of sadness, but of a profound, disorienting relief. For a year, I had been a fortress. I had been a general. I had been a CEO and a plaintiff and a symbol. The thought of being someone something again had seemed impossible, a violation of the hard-won peace I'd carved out. But Andrew wasn't asking me to be his something. He was asking to be part of my everything. I thought of the late nights, the shared takeout, the way he'd argued a point on a contract, not to dominate, but to make it stronger. I thought of his silent, furious pride at the gala, his steady presence outside the mediation, the way he looked at me now, not as a prize or a project, but as a force of nature he respectfully, wholeheartedly admired. The vault around my heart didn't just unlock, the door dissolved, rendered obsolete by the sheer, steady warmth of his regard. Yes, I said, the word a soft exhale in the night air. Then, a smile breaking through like the sun. You can apply for the position. The benefits are excellent. The workload, however, is tremendous. He laughed, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy, and pulled me into his arms. It wasn't a desperate, possessive clutch. It was a coming home embrace. My forehead rested against his shoulder, and for the first time since I'd walked into Eleanor's party, I felt a weight I hadn't even known I was carrying lift clean away. The fight was over. The future was here, and it was bright. The next morning, the business and society pages of the Wall Street Journal ran a rare, dual feature. The left column, From Ashes to Empire, Serafina Lancaster's Phoenix Collective opens, backed by West Capital. The right column, Lancaster Capital Assets, finally liquidated. SEC, probe ongoing. The juxtaposition was stark, beautiful, and utterly complete. I was reading the articles in the sunlit quiet of my Darar. New penthouse in the West Village, a sprawling space Andrew and I had bought together. When my phone rang, Andrew, from the kitchen where he was making coffee, called out, "It's Rebecca. You want me to get it?" "I've got it," I said, swiping to answer. "Rebecca, don't tell me there's more paperwork." "Not that kind," she said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. "It's Eleanor Lancaster's lawyer. She's been trying to reach you. She's not well. Early-stage lung cancer. She starts aggressive treatment next week. She wants to see you, to apologize, in person." I went very still. Andrew, sensing the shift, came to lean in the doorway, a mug in each hand, his expression questioning. Eleanor, the architect of so much early misery, the willing audience for my humiliation, the woman who had chosen the easy lie of Chloe over the complicated truth of me. I had thought I was done with all the Lancasters. "What did you tell her lawyer?" I asked, my voice flat. "I told him you were under no obligation, and that I would relay the message. That's all." Rebecca paused. She sounds different. Sarah, frightened, truly remorseful. "I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you the data." I looked at Andrew. He gave a slight shrug, his eyes saying, "Your call, always." I thought of the empty, haunted look in Leo's eyes last night. I thought of the vibrant, hopeful faces at the Phoenix Collective. I thought of the scar on my chest. No longer a secret wound, but a badge of a survival so complete it had become irrelevant. My anger towards Eleanor was an old, cold stone. It held no heat anymore. Carrying it any further would be a burden, not a weapon. "Tell her lawyer I'll see her," I said. Sunday, 3 p.m., at the tea room at the Lowell. 1 hour. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Okay, I'll set it up." "Serafina, why?" I looked out the window at the new leaves on the trees, at the clear blue sky over my new city, my new life, because the fire's gone out. "Rebecca," I said quietly, "all that's left is the space where it used to burn, and I'm tired of guarding an empty hearth." 1 year. The measurement of time had shifted. It was no longer marked by the anniversaries of a betrayal, but by milestones of creation. The Phoenix Collective's first fund had seen 2 of its 10 companies acquired, with a third heading for a staggering Series B round. My scar, when I caught a glimpse of it in the mirror, was just a part of my topography now. like a river on a map. The story attached to it had been told, had served its purpose, and had finally been allowed to fade. I was no longer the woman with the scar or the wronged wife. In the circles that mattered, at the quiet rooms where real money and ideas met, I was Serafina West, managing partner of the West Lancaster Venture Fund. Andrew had insisted on the name change. It's not a concession, it's a fact. This is our empire. Our empire. The word, which once would have tasted like ash, now felt solid, earned, ours. The invitation to the Vanity Fair Oscar party was a testament to that new reality. It wasn't for the wife of a financier. It was for an investor in the Best Documentary Feature nominee, The Unbroken Code, a film about female cryptographers in World War II. Produced by a studio we'd backed in its infancy. This wasn't social climbing, it was a professional victory lap on the most glittering track in the world. The car inched down the teeming, flashbulb strobed Sunset Boulevard. Andrew, resplendent in a midnight blue Tom Ford tuxedo, squeezed my hand. I was a column of liquid silver in a custom Jason Wu gown. Its severe lines and metallic sheen a deliberate statement. I was not soft. I was brilliant, reflective, impenetrable. Nervous? Andrew asked, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. I looked out at the sea of screaming fans, the blinding wall of photographers. Not even a little. It was the truth. The most terrifying audience I'd ever faced had been in a Park Avenue brownstone. This was just noise and light. We stepped onto the red carpet. The cacophony was physical, a wall of sound. Andrew kept it proprietary, steadying hand on the small of my back as we paused for the step and repeat. The photographer's shouts were a blur, but one voice, sharp and clear, cut through. Serafina, over here. How does it feel to go from society scandal to Hollywood power player in a year? I turned, a practiced, serene smile on my lips, and met the lens directly. Scandal is something that happens to you, I said, my voice calm but carrying. Power is something you build for yourself. I prefer building. Andrew's chuckle beside me was a low, warm rumble. The reporter blinked, then grinned, scribbling furiously. The narrative was set, and I had written the headline myself. Inside the whirlwind of the party, I was a quiet center of gravity. I accepted congratulations on the film. I discussed blockchain financing models with a streaming giant CEO. I was in my element. And then, across the crowded, star-studded room, I saw a flash of familiar, overly bright blonde hair. Chloe. She was clinging to the arm of a reality TV star, 20 years her senior. Her laughter too high, her dress too tight. She was a background ornament in a scene where I was a featured player. Our eyes met. A complex dance of recognition flickered in hers. Hatred, envy, a pathetic flicker of the old challenge. She leaned in, whispering something to her date, and began to weave through the crowd toward me. Andrew tensed minutely beside me. Want to move? No, I said softly. Let her come. It's the last page of her chapter. Let's read it together. She arrived in a cloud of cheap, cloying perfume that fought a losing battle against the scent of gardenias and wealth. Serafina, she purred, her smile a gash of pink. Or should I call you Serafina West now? Moving on so fast. How modern. Chloe, I replied, my tone as one might use for a slightly bothersome server. You look present. I let my gaze sweep over her date, who was staring at Meryl Streep across the room. How's the gallery world? The barb hit its mark. The gallery had never opened. The space was mine. She had nothing. Her smile tightened into a grimace. Thriving. I'm consulting now. For important collectors. I'm sure you are, I said, my voice dripping with a boredom, so profound it was more insult than any shout. I turned my shoulder to her slightly, a physical period at the end of our non-conversation. Andrew, darling, wasn't that the director of photography? I'd love to compliment his work. It was the ultimate dismissal. Not a fight, not a scene, a simple, elegant refusal to engage. I had rendered her irrelevant. The fury in her eyes was pure and hot, but it had no power here. Not in this room. Not in my life. She stood there, frozen, as Andrew guided me away, his hand firm on my back. That, he murmured in my ear, was a masterpiece of contemptuous neglect. Energy is a currency. Andrew, I said, plucking a glass of champagne from a passing tray. I'm done spending mine on her. The party swirled on. At midnight, as the first awards were being announced in the Dolby Theater, Andrew guided me out through a side entrance, away from the clamor. The sudden quiet of the Beverly Hills night was a blessing. The air was cool, scented with jasmine. Above us, the California stars were faint pinpricks against the velvet sky, outshone by the terrestrial constellations of the hills. Our driver was waiting, but Andrew shook his head. Give us a minute. James. We were alone in the hushed courtyard of the hotel. The distant sounds of the party were a muffled bass line. Andrew turned to me, his face half in shadow, half illuminated by the soft glow from a sconce. The easy, confident partner was gone. In his place was a man stripped down to raw, vulnerable honesty. For a year, he began, his voice low and intent. I've watched you execute the most elegant demolition and reconstruction of a life I've ever seen. I've watched you take pain and forge it into purpose. I've watched you turn betrayal into a blueprint for something better. He took a step closer, his eyes searching mine. That first day in the conference room, I saw the fire. But Sarah, would I fallen in love with deeply, irrevocably, stupidly in love with is the architect, the woman who doesn't just burn, but who builds with the heat. My breath caught. The noise of the world, the ghost of the party, the entire past year seemed to recede into a silent, waiting ring around us. He reached into his pocket, not for a ring box. He pulled out a simple, folded piece of thick, creamy paper. He handed it to me, his fingers brushing mine. Puzzled, I unfolded it. It was a mocked-up, exquisitely detailed architectural sketch, not of a building. It was a floor plan, labeled The Future, Draft 1.0. There were rooms sketched in. Library, yours. Music room, mine. Shared office, arguments welcome. One room was simply labeled. In the center was a large, open space labeled the heart. Location, wherever we are. Tears, hot and sudden, blurred the beautiful lines. I looked up at him. I'm not asking you to marry me, Serafina, he said, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Not yet. I'm applying for the job, the permanent position, as co-architect, partner in the truest, deepest, most boring, paperwork-filled, morning breath, shared mortgage sense of the word. I'm asking for the right to build that. He nodded at the sketch in my trembling hands. With you, to fill in the TBD together, to argue about the landscaping and make up over coffee, to be the sanctuary we both come home to after a day of conquering worlds. He wasn't offering to save me. He wasn't offering to be my everything. He was offering to be my equal, to be my home. It was the most terrifying, magnificent proposition I had ever received. The vault was gone. The fortress walls had long since crumbled, recycled into the foundations of something new. What stood before him was just me, Serafina, flawed, strong, scarred, hopeful. I looked from the beautiful, hopeful sketch to his face, to the love and the fearless commitment shining there, utterly devoid of the conditional clauses and hidden agendas that had poisoned my past. Yes, I said, the word a vow, a promise, a beginning. The application is approved, pending a 90-day review period. Of course, his laugh was a burst of pure joy in the quiet night. He pulled me into his arms, and I went willingly, the silver gown crushed between us, the sketch held safely in my hand against his back. His kiss was not a claim. but a celebration, a seal on a contract we had both already signed with a year of trust, of partnership, of silent, unwavering belief in each other. Later, in the quiet of our rented Beverly Hills villa, as the first reports of the night's Oscar winners flickered on a muted screen, I lay with my head on Andrew's chest, the architectural sketch resting on the bedside table. My phone buzzed once with a Wall Street Journal News alert. I reached for it. The headline said it all. From ashes to empire. How Serafina Lancaster built a venture after a very public divorce. The article was long, detailed, covering the rise of the Phoenix Collective, the fund with Andrew, the quiet, formidable empire we were building. Buried near the end was a single, final paragraph about Leo, noting the conclusion of the SEC case and his permanent bar from the securities industry. I put the phone down. Screen dark. Andrew stirred beside me. Everything okay? Everything, I said, turning to him, is just beginning. I kissed him, a slow, sweet promise of the future sketched on that piece of paper. The elegant victory wasn't in the headlines or the ruined lives of those who'd wronged me. It was in this quiet, in this peace, in the boundless, terrifying, wonderful freedom of the blank page ahead, and the man who wanted nothing more than to write the next chapter with me, word by word, dream by dream,